So I just wanted to introduce you to this guitar that I've had lying around for a little while. It's a 1980s Korean made Strat copy by the UK company Marlin, but as I say, it was basically produced in Korea and then distributed by Marlin, who are actually a Welsh company, I think. And the reason I got this guitar was because my first ever guitar was one of these in a slightly different configuration, but basically the same thing. What can I say about it? For a start, this is a really good example. It was used by a gigging musician quite regularly, who's actually had the frets ground down so it can achieve a very low action, and he also replaced all of the hardware, well, the bridge at least anyway, with uprated versions of the same model, sort of the equivalent of replacing the bridge on a bullet Strat with one from a Mexican Strat. And yeah, I think he also converted this to a triple single coil, because this guitar will have originally been single and then a dual hot rail, like a hot rail humbucker, which I think pretty much all of these guitars had. The lock-in trem system works absolutely fantastically. I'm rather enjoying having that. It stays in tune very, very well. All the fine tuners and everything work great. The only things that are really wrong with this guitar are electrical, in that, well, to be honest, the tone's not particularly good. I am a bit of a humbucker man myself, but even still I think the pickups aren't great, and the tone knobs don't even actually appear to be wired in. They don't seem to do much. In addition to that, the bridge is riding very high because it probably had 9s on and I put 10s on, so I need to sort that out. And it also sounded quite badly grounded as well. So I think the plan is to set the tension on the bridge just to get it roughly right, and then we'll get the back off and have a look at we'll get the strings off and then take the pick guard off so we can have a look at what's going on with the electronics. So back in a moment. So there we go, that's it with the back plate off, and you can see the plate there, which kind of misleadingly says that it's a British guitar, which it isn't. It's a British company but made in Korea. The trem system, my only complaint about this is actually the strings are really hard to poke through, especially when you've got the back plate on. The strings don't kind of guide through the holes very easily, but there you go. By the look of this, I'm not entirely sure these springs are original. The screws holding the trem in are actually already quite far in, and they're still fairly slack, so I'm wondering if this guitar's been made up from parts and they're just maybe not quite the original spec strings, but I should still be able to tighten them enough to get that bridge down a bit. The ground wire's properly attached, it's not going anywhere, so we'll have to check that out from the other side. Back in a moment. So off camera there, I've just tightened those screws a little bit, retuning the guitar as I went, and now we should be able to see that bridge is still floating up, but it's actually a little bit closer down. It's actually a little bit closer down to the body than it previously was. We don't actually want it any lower because I wanted at least a semitone worth of pitch up on the high E string, and that's about where we are, maybe just slightly over that. So that's great. Let's get the strings off and have a look at what's under this pick guard. One thing I'm noticing as I'm taking the strings off here, which I have noticed before to be fair, I'd just forgotten about it. The pull spacings on these pickups do not match where the strings are, look at that. Now, I'm very confident that this is not the original pick guard. If you look at the gap around here, you can see that it was probably designed for a Fender Strat and has been adapted to this guitar. So the question is, does it just need realigned, or are these pull spacings completely wrong? I would say, given that that one's pretty centered and this one's way off, that the pole spacings are completely wrong, which is slightly odd because I believe these to be the original Marlin pickups. So does that mean the bridge that's gone on is of a different spacing? Quite possibly, but we'll investigate that further once we've got it apart. Okay, so spot the difference. I've gone ahead and removed the neck. I thought since we had a bit of a geometry issue going on down here, it'd be a good idea just to check that the neck was on straight and true. Since I didn't have any of my measuring tools or anything on me, I thought I'd just see how good fit the neck is in the pocket, and I'm pleased to report I can't even put it in with one hand. It's very tight. That's a nice tight fit in the pocket there. Just about lift the guitar up with it before it gives. Certainly acceptable. So I don't think we have any problems with the neck being out of line. Can't see any previous evidence of the neck being removed, and definitely does seem to match the guitar. So I think the most likely culprit is that the original owner has actually replaced the bridge. Well, I know he's replaced the bridge, but I don't think it's been as like for like as he actually said. If you look in this corner, the trem doesn't actually cover the hole exactly, and I do know from looking at pictures of the majority of these, they had a much bigger trem that came right the way out here. So I think the spacing on this trem is probably actually going to be wrong for the pickups, but let's get that pick guard off anyway and have a look at what's inside. Well, so we've opened it up. As we can see, it's definitely being played with. Someone's taken the initiative to connect up the input jack and the bridge ground wires to little connectors so that they can easily be disconnected. Oh, and we can see that the bridge is indeed routed for a humbucker. Neck almost is, but not quite. Well, I don't think it would take much to actually get a humbucker in there if we really wanted to. That's worth bearing in mind. The pick guard, I've checked the wiring and it is wired exactly as per a standard Stratocaster. The only difference is it's not done very neatly, and the tone pots are 500k, whereas I believe they're normally 250k on a standard Strat. I'd have to do my homework to check what kind of difference that would actually make, but as you can see, the solder jobs aren't brilliant, which isn't the end of the world. But one thing that really concerns me, remember I'm looking for a bad ground or a reason why these tone pots aren't working. I don't know if you can see in here, the hot wires from the pickups all connect here, and then the signal comes out effectively along this red wire. This wire here, which is quite badly connected, actually goes to the output jack. But I don't think we'll actually see on the camera here, but these two pins, the middle pin and the far pin, the grounding wire from the output jack, you can see there's a little spur coming off it, and if it's not touching the hot wire from the pickups, it's bloody close. And this is obviously just a bit of a mess. So my temptation would be here, just for a bit of practice more than anything else, I think, would be to actually completely strip this down and rewire it. However, I need to decide whether the effort's going to be worth it, because it sounds like we might want to consider putting other pickups in there or bridge with different spacing, but my preference would definitely be towards the pickups, budget permitting of course. So the dilemma is, this guitar, I think it cost me, including the case, it cost me £60, and I think the guitar itself is probably worth about £60 to £80 if it's in good condition, which, I mean, the guitar itself is, it's just all of this problem needs sorting out. But that means I don't really want to go spending a lot of money on you know, like a Seymour Duncan loaded pick guard or something like that. I mean, I'd quite like to, but then I'm spending a lot more on the guitar than it's actually worth. And to be honest with you, even if it's not the right dimensions, this bridge seems to work really well for me, so it would be a shame to get rid of that. So I think what I'm going to have to do is do my homework and measure the spacing of these pole pieces on the pickups, measure the spacing on the bridge, and see what I can come up with. So just interjecting here with a quick sort of post-production note. Unfortunately, it transpires that the videos I've been recording on the computer today have been recording without any sound, which is about par for the course. So I thought I'd just fill you in on what I've been doing really. The state of play when it came to test the electronics for the guitar was that the 5-way selector switch was more or less working, but did have some intermittent issues if you applied pressure on it or wiggled it from side to side, which isn't the end of the world, but not ideal. The pot for the neck pickup was intermittently working, and the pot for the middle pickup just wasn't working at all, the tone pot that is. As you can see now, I'm just effectively working through testing these things, tweaking them, testing them again. I tried cleaning contacts all with contact cleaner. The more and more I actually just strip the original wiring and the original components out of this guitar and just replace it from scratch, the better it seems to get really. I apologise by the way if I do sound a little bit funny compared to normal. I am absolutely full of cold. So this was just a nice little Sunday job to get on with while I wasn't feeling 100%. We did discover that there was a bit of a loose leg on one of the tone pots, the pot for the middle pickup I believe it was, and I tried my best to get that working but couldn't get it working reliably. I just temporarily tacked in another 500k pot of another size, which did seem to improve that, but unfortunately there was just still some intermittency issues, mainly around the selector switch and the other pot. To be honest with you, the selector switch was getting from bad to worse the more I tried to fiddle with it as well, which is a shame, but unfortunately these things just sometimes need replaced. They're not really worth the hours that you'd have to put into them to try and get them repaired, and to be fair I might not even manage to get it repaired in the end anyway. I've been weighing up my options and looking around online if I want to try and repair the guitar as cheap as possible. If I'm prepared to wait for something to come from China, I could order a complete wiring loom, which is effectively all of the pots and the 5-way selector switch and the input jack pre-wired, and I could get that delivered for about £2, which is nothing really. Obviously it's not going to be the highest quality in the world, but as long as it works that'll be fine. Unfortunately I don't really want to wait the month that it would take to get delivered from China, so I'm effectively going to order the same thing just stocked in the UK via Amazon Prime. I think it's going to cost me £5 or just over. That means I should be able to get it this week, fit it in the guitar and update you on what happens. It is tempting to spend about £30 to get maybe a triple mini humbucker, preloaded pickguard with coil splitting and all the rest of it, but realistically I think I'd have more fun trying to sell this guitar and get a slightly better one, rather than trying to sort of hot rod this guitar as it is. So that's my plan. Seems to make sense to me at the time. Hopefully it will work. Randy Crawford seems to agree. She's certainly smiling about it. I think I'll end the video here for now. It's been a long one. Sorry if it's been a little bit patchy. I've just been kind of shooting as I went really. I'd never actually intended to make a video of this, but I thought I might as well just try and get something out of it as I went. As I say, as soon as I get that wiring harness I'll fit it and I'll let you know how it's gone. So until then, goodbye.